In December 1987, a time when most families gather together to celebrate, would mark a massacre unlike most have seen. This is a look into the twisted life of one man and what drove him to kill his entire family. Ronald Gene Simmons was born on July 15, 1940, in Chicago, Illinois, to Loretta and William Simmons. On January 31, 1943, William Simmons died of a stroke. Within a year, Simmons' mother married again, this time to William Griffin, a civil engineer for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. His stepfather's various job transfers would move the family across Arkansas during his childhood. In 1957, Ronald dropped out of school and joined the U.S. Navy. He was stationed in Bremerton Naval Base in Washington, where he met his future wife, Rebecca. They married in New Mexico on July 9, 1960. The couple had 7 children over the next 18 years. Simmons left the Navy in 1963 and later joined the Air Force. Simmons was given a Bronze Star during his 22-year military career, the Republic of Vietnam Cross for serving as an airman, and the Medal for Outstanding Marksmanship by the Air Force. On November 30, 1979, Simmons retired, having reached the rank of Master Sergeant. On April 3, 1981, Simmons was being investigated by the New Mexico Department of Human Services for allegations that he had fathered a child with his 17-year-old daughter, Sheila. Fearing arrest, Simmons fled with his family. In 1983, they finally settled on a 13-acre tract of land that would become known as Mockingbird Hill. There, the family lived in a house made of 2 older model mobile homes joined together to create one large home, and was enclosed in some areas by a wooden privacy fence as high as 10 feet tall. On December 22, 1987, Ronald Simmons began a murder spree that ended with 16 people dead. First, Ronald Simmons bludgeoned and shot his wife and son, 29-year-old Ronald Gene Simmons Jr., who had been visiting the family. He then strangled his 3-year-old granddaughter. Simmons then dumped the bodies in a pit that he had instructed the children to dig months before for a 3rd family outhouse. Later the same day, the youngest children returned home from school. When they arrived, he told them he had presents for them, but wanted to give them one at a time. He first killed his daughter, 17-year-old Loretta, whom Simmons strangled and held under the water in a rain barrel. The 3 other children, Eddie, Marianne, and Becky, ages 14, 11, and 8, were then killed in the same way. Investigators would later find all 7 bodies in the hole for the outhouse. The older Simmons children were invited to an after-Christmas dinner at the Simmons home on December 26, 1987. William Simmons II, 23 years old, his 21-year-old wife, Renata Simmons, and their 20-month-old son were probably the first to arrive. William and Renata were shot, their bodies left by the dining room table and covered with their own coats and some bedding. Their son was killed and placed into the trunk of a car behind the Simmons home. Next to arrive were Simmons' 24-year-old daughter Sheila and her husband, 33-year-old Dennis McNulty. They also brought along their children. 7-year-old Sylvia, who was the daughter of Sheila and her father, and 21-month-old Michael. Ronald shot both Sheila and Dennis. Sheila's body was later laid on the dining room table and covered with Rebecca's best tablecloth. Simmons strangled Sylvia and Michael. Michael was then placed into the trunk of yet another parked car on the property. After the murders, Simmons went for a drink in the local bar, then returned home to spend the rest of the evening and the following day drinking beer and watching television, apparently unbothered by the corpses of his family surrounding him. On the morning of December 28th, the spree continued. Simmons was driving a car belonging to his son Ronald Jr. to a local Walmart where he bought a second pistol. His next stop was to the law firm of Peel, Eddy, and Gibbons. Simmons entered the building and killed receptionist Kathy Kendrick. shooting her in the head 4 times. Next, he went to the Taylor Oil Company, where he shot and wounded Russell Taylor, the owner of Sinclair Mini Mart where he had worked. He then shot and killed Jim Chafin, a fireman and part-time truck driver for Taylor Oil. Simmons shot at and missed another employee before leaving the building. Simmons' next stop was the Sinclair Mini Mart, where he shot and wounded 2 more. His last destination was the Woodline Motor Freight Company. There he found his former supervisor, Joyce Butts, and wounded her in the head and chest. He then took worker Vicki Jackson at gunpoint into an office and advised her to phone the police. Ronald allegedly told Jackson, "I've come to do what I've wanted to do. It's all over now. I've gotten everybody who wanted to hurt me." He surrendered to Russellville police when they arrived. Simmons was charged with 16 counts of murder, found guilty and sentenced to death. He refused to appeal his death sentence, stating, quote, "To those who oppose the death penalty, in my particular case, anything short of death would be cruel and unusual punishment." Now you're probably wondering what would drive a man to murder 16 people, including his entire family. The motive was never made clear, but there were several speculations in the years following the disaster. One thought was that Simmons had discovered that his wife was secretly planning to divorce, driving him into a murderous rage. "I don't want to live the rest of my life with Dad. I am a prisoner here, and the kids too," Rebecca had written to their son shortly before the murders. "Every time I think of freedom, I want out as soon as possible." Another, even darker theory suggests that Simmons felt spurned advances of love from his own daughter, Sheila, who eventually left home to marry. Quote, "He was infatuated with his daughter," said John Harris, one of Simmons' defense attorneys. Harris says by 1987, Simmons had felt his family was starting to slip away. Quote, "I think he felt like they are going to take him out. He's going to take them out first. I think that was his mindset." Harris watched Simmons' execution in 1990. He said that although Simmons had said all along that he wanted to die, when the lethal injection began, Simmons started writhing. Harris said, "The only explanation I can find for that is that the lethal injection caused him excruciating pain. Or he saw something on the other side that he didn't like."